Massachusetts. Law students can go right into court and defend their clients, take a case all the way, win or lose. Today's law student wants real action, and he's getting it. Not in the classroom or out of books, but in our courts, helping people who need legal services. These students are doing it at the neighborhood law office. They're lawyers. They're young lawyers.
In a game of life, there would be no winners if it weren't for all those beautiful losers.
Vince, you're not talented, you're just lucky.
Verily, it matters not who won or lost, but how you play the game.
Operator, this is an emergency. Put me through to St. Charles Hospital. There's been an accident, a wreck. My son's been hurt. Please, I've got to get a doctor. Leave him alone. I'm a doctor. You're what? A doctor. They got an ambulance on the way. They told me not to move him. Not to move him!
I don't care what they told you.
Keep away from him. I'm his father.
Yeah? Then act like it. Get out of the way.
Don't touch him. Please, don't touch him.
If anybody calls, I'm going to be in the library.
So he mumbles.
Well, I agree with you.
I think it's great that he mumbles. I think everybody should mumble who wants to mumble.
help you, sir?
Free legal services, right? Well, I need a lawyer. Specifically a lawyer I don't have to pay. For the uncool reason, I can't afford to.
Well, just fill the card out, mister.
Dr. Vince Sabowski.
I'm Aaron Silverman. I'm the student staff assistant.
One student lawyer, one intern. Not much firepower, right?
Well, it depends how much we need. Excuse me.
Hello, Mr. Barrett's office. May I help you? Oh, hi, Aaron.
Very good.
Yeah. Okay,
Very
hold on a minute.
good. Excellent. One suggestion. Commonwealth versus Ridgeway, 1962, and Commonwealth versus Cawthorpe, Appellate Court, 1959. I'd check it out, sir. Yes?
Yes, sir.
Right. I'll come by, Aaron.
I want to know just two things. Is that legal mumbo-jumbo for real? And am I in trouble?
Well, if that's all you want to know, I can tell you right quick. You're charged with battery against a minor. You're being sued for damages, both compensatory and punitive, in the amount of $50,000. Now, the gist of their contention is that in moving the young boy against his father's orders, you aggravated the damage to his right shoulder, right collarbone. And that as a result of these injuries that you inflicted by moving the boy, the normal use of his right arm will be seriously restricted for some indefinite period. So to answer your two questions, this is for real. You are in trouble. You did move the boy, didn't you?
I pulled him out of the car, sure.
And his father did tell you not to?
Right.
Well then, why did you move him?
Save his life.
Well, there's our case. A trained doctor.
An intern.
All right. An intern. Nevertheless trained. No ulterior motives. Wanting to save a human life. It's as simple as that.
Aaron, excuse me. I know Mr. Norman's attorney, Elliot Tower. I'm certain he anticipated your reaction to these charges. Therefore, we mustn't assume that these represent his entire case. Doctor.
Dr. Arliss, please call the operator. Dr. Arliss.
A bum rap can make a big reputation.
Call the operator.
Look at Dreyfus. How rough's it gonna be?
They want 50,000. I better start making house calls. Hey, she's gonna be all right.
Believe it.
Dr. Sadowski, report immediately to Dr.
Old Evelyn Day's
Sher's
been paging you for an hour.
She misses me, forget it.
Dr. Sadowski, please report immediately to Dr. Sher's office.
I would appreciate your signature, Dr. Sabowski. Right here.
So, just like that, I'm suspended.
Until there's a decision one way or another in a court of law, yes.
Makes sense. Why get the hospital involved?
The hospital is involved. Impulsive behavior by any doctor can hurt the entire medical community.
I tried to save that boy's life. What am I saying? I did save his life. If that's impulsive, I better learn to live with it.
When that young boy's father told you to keep back, your responsibility was over and done with.
You know something, Doctor? You and I are miles apart.
Just a minute. You know, I admit there's a certain virtue, a certain innocence in your attitude. And when I was your age, well, I'll spare you that. But the blunt facts of life apply to medicine as well as to anything else. What people think about us, what the newspapers write about us, the funds that we get for research, it's all one package. Now, medicine, perhaps I've learned this too well, is business. If you think otherwise, just ask anybody who's paying $70 a day for a room.
What you're saying is if there was no lawsuit, no 50,000 at stake, I'd be a hero.
I'm not sure that's right, Vince. Nobody gets medals for mistakes. Not even honest ones.
Howdy. Dr. Sabowski.
Dr. Sadowski, please come.
How'd it go?
Until the issue is resolved in court, I am busted. Forthwith.
You mean no hearing?
No, you know old Appleday's motto, the test of a good executive is a quick decision. A quick decision, not a good one. Why, Counselor. Aaron? Dr. Janie Gilmore. Aaron Silver. And,
Patricia Walker, hi.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should have introduced you. Pat's going to be working with us on the case.
look, I can use all the help I can get because I just got suspended.
What'd you just say?
Can I buy you a cup of coffee?
What'd you just say?
It happens.
Just like that?
Medical protocol, you could say. In my case, get my job back for me.
This might sound
Dr.
ridiculous.
Cobain.
Make it Vince.
All right, Vince, I'm going to have to ask you a few questions. On the day of the accident, specifically the hour just preceding it, what were you doing?
Well, it was my day off, so I slept late. And I returned some records I bought, you know, a typical day in the life of a young intern.
I'm glad you had a nice day, but what I'm really interested in is the hours just prior to the accident.
Oh, driving around.
Just driving around?
Yeah.
The accident occurred at 3 o'clock. You got there at 3:15. Did you stop? Did you have lunch or something like that?
No. I was going to buy Janie a pizza.
So you were just driving around. You didn't stop at
Yeah,
all?
well, I stopped at the Red Fox Inn.
But you said you didn't have anything to eat.
Didn't. Stopped for a few drinks.
A few drinks. A typical day in the life of an intern.
Counselor.
Elliot, good of you to stop by.
It's my pleasure, David. How have you been?
Well, I haven't had time to find out.
Mm-hmm. How you been doing with those student lawyers of yours?
That's challenging. Right, kids. Sit down.
Oh, thank you.
Have something to drink?
No, nothing. Well, David, I'm taking the liberty of inviting my client, Mr. Norman, to join us.
Good. Elliot, we're prepared to settle.
I'm afraid that's out of the question, David.
Does Mr. Norman realize that Dr. Sabowski, being an intern, has no malpractice insurance?
Yes, I've explained that to him.
And that the hospital insurance covers him only for the assigned official tours of duty?
Yes, he understands that too, David.
Well, what's he after, justice or blood?
Well, he's a widower. His son means everything to him. But aside from that, he's a very decent man, but a very angry man.
Excuse me.
Mr. Barrett, this is Mr. Norman. Mr. Norman, Mr. Barrett.
How do you do? Won't you sit down?
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Norman, I'm an advisor with the neighborhood law office, and I'll be working with a student attorney who represents Dr. Sabowski in your action against him.
Henry, the defense is prepared to settle out of court. An apology, a token payment.
No, absolutely not.
Mr. Norman, Dr. Sabowski has a long career ahead of him, which your action may end right now.
Mr. Barrett, I'm not anti-hippie or anti-peacenik or anti-much of anything. I told Sabowski not to move my son, but he ignored me. He defied me.
Mr. Norman, are you convinced that Dr. Sabowski willfully harmed your son?
I'll answer that question and any others in a court of law.
Don't go away. The Young Lawyers.
Hi.
Now, where were we?
Second round of drinks. Dr. Sabowski just had another beer.
That's right. He had a beer, and the other two guys had scotches.
What about the third round of drinks?
It was the same. A beer for Vince and scotch for the others.
How about the time?
The early lunch crowd was gone. It was just after 3.
Well, Dr. Sabowski's group, did they order anything to eat, like pretzels or snacks or...
No, because they'd have to order stuff like that, and then it would be on my checks.
Did they do anything else besides drink?
Rapped, played darts.
If you had to use just that one word, like, were they noisy, happy,
I'd say just what I said to the other lawyer that was out here. They were, like, hilarious.
He's quite sure about the time, huh? No doubt about it.
No doubt about it. 3 o'clock.
Who won the dart game? I love sports. Interested in the results. Find out.
possibility that car might have caught fire?
No.
How about start rolling? You think the car might start rolling?
I checked. Brakes were set.
Vince, don't you understand what I'm trying to do? I'm trying to establish some sort of circumstance that might have justified the fact that you moved the kid before the ambulance got here. I don't want you to lie. I don't want you to say anything that's not true.
I told you I thought he was going sour. Thought he died. Tried to see him the other day at the Mossman Clinic. Mossman, by the way, is one fine doctor. They wouldn't let me see him. But the nurse told me he's doing fine. I acted to save that boy's life. Isn't that enough?
Yeah, it's enough for me, but I don't know if it's going to be enough for the jury when the old man testifies they told you not to move his son.
Look, it's a medical problem, not a parental problem. Listen, you've got to understand, without malpractice insurance, that $50,000 comes out of my hide. Finishing up as an intern, becoming a doctor, forget it, I'm through. That's what you've got to make that jury understand. That I took a chance. Maybe I broke some rules, but you've got to make them see why. To help another human being. Wouldn't you ever do that?
Yeah. I personally would probably do that, but as a lawyer, especially as a student lawyer, I have to play it pretty much by the book.
Okay, suppose some pregnant girl comes into your office, or some teenager, a couple of roaches of pot found in his car. He don't know how they got there. You play everything by the book? You say, go on home and talk it over with your parents, check it out with a Cox fella, or sometimes you really try to help.
I play it by the book. Except sometimes I don't read the fine print. And if I don't read the fine print, well, then I'd probably be in more trouble than you are.
Right on. You make some mistake, you take some chance helping some frightened teenager, you're in the same mess I'm in. Graduating from school, practicing law, forget it. What's important is why you break that rule. That's what you've got to try to make that jury understand.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you said try, Vince.
There's a compound fracture of the right collarbone and a splintered shoulder socket. Put me on the stand, Miss Walters, and I'll tell the world Vince is a fine doctor. But ask me if I'd have moved that boy, the answer's got to be no.
Would you have moved the boy under the circumstances, Dr. Bailey?
With an ambulance on the way, with the father saying hands off, no way. I wouldn't have touched him.
Are you influenced, in part, by the fact that Dr. Sabowski is being sued at present for moving the boy?
Something like that you pay attention to. Sure.
And if Dr. Sabowski loses the suit and is hit with a $50,000 fine, you'd be even less inclined to move him in the future.
Mister, you better believe it.
We're talking logically over a cup of coffee. I mean, what would you have done at the scene of the accident if you were faced with immediate, desperate demands placed on your professional skill? What would you have done then?
Who knows? Maybe instinct would take over.
Don't go away. The Young Lawyers will be right back.
Y'all ready for this?
Meet Dexter and Ed, the hard-working crew of Good Burger. One thinks he's all that. The other isn't all there.
Just give me a good shake. Okay. I want Good Burger out of business.
Now the competition is out to swallow.
Mr. Norman, would you describe yourself as a wealthy man?
Objection, Your Honor. Now, my client's wealth, or lack of it, is, as I submit, irrelevant to the issue under consideration.
Counselor, I'm sure you realize wealth is a relative concept. To a laborer, the word would mean one thing. To a banker, quite another. However, I will allow you to continue the present line of inquiry if you will restate your question more precisely. Objection overruled.
Mr. Norman, are you chairman of the board of the Norman Construction Company?
The last time I looked, my name was still on the door.
Well, I guess I can accept that as an affirmative answer. Is it not true that that damages against Dr. Sabowski in the sum of $1 would achieve the same purpose as damages in the amount of $50,000?
No, I figure 50,000 today and in the future will get Dr. Sabowski's attention. Nothing could get his attention when I told him to keep his hands off my son.
You testified, Mr. Norman, that on the day of the accident, you called St. Charles Hospital. Now, the person that you talked to, did he identify himself as a doctor?
No, not in so many words. Just told me he would dispatch an ambulance and not to move the boy.
And as a result of this conversation with an unidentified person, What action did you take?
Well, then I returned to the car and I told this man to keep his hands off my son.
Are you pointing to Dr. Vincent Sabowski, the defendant in the action?
Yes.
Then let the record so indicate. Did Dr. Sabowski identify himself as a doctor?
That's what he said he was.
Did you ask him for any further identification?
No.
May I ask why not?
Because he'd been drinking.
Oh. Was he stumbling or staggering?
No.
Was he mumbling? Was he talking incoherently? Did you have trouble understanding what he was saying?
No.
Then what subjective evaluation did you employ to decide whether or not Dr. Sabowski was in a drunken state?
I've been to enough lodge meetings and conventions to know when a man is half-loaded.
But you just testified that Dr. Sabowski showed no physical observable evidence of being drunk.
Okay, well, he seemed emotional. I didn't like the way he looked.
Are you saying, sir, that with your son gravely injured, unquestionably in a great deal of pain, that you refused help from a man stating to be a doctor? Refused help because you didn't like the way he looked?
I thought I already answered that question. I didn't want him touching my son.
Mr. Norman, who picked your son up from the side of the road and put him inside the ambulance?
The 2 ambulance attendants.
No further questions.
Now, Dr. Mossman, did you receive a telephone call the night of August 23rd?
Yes.
Now, was that telephone call from Henry Norman?
Yes.
What action did you take on the basis of that telephone call?
I drove immediately to the accident ward of St. Charles Hospital.
At the accident ward, did you have a conversation with Mr. Norman?
Yes.
Would you be good enough to tell the court the burden of that conversation?
He asked me to examine his son.
Did you examine his son?
Yes.
Would you tell the court the determination of that examination?
Well, the boy had multiple fractures of the right collarbone, right shoulder blade, right shoulder socket.
Subsequently, you treated the boy?
Yes, he was in the orthopedic unit of my clinic for 6 weeks.
Now, as the results of your examinations, what prognosis do you have in relation to the boy's condition?
The movement of his right arm and right shoulder will be seriously impaired.
Yes. Now, for how long?
Given optimum progress, continued therapy, I would say 1 or 2 years.
Objection, Your Honor. We have conceded to Dr. Mossman's professional qualifications. However, this is not an invitation to guesswork.
Counselor, would you care to rephrase your question?
No, thank you, Your Honor. I will withdraw it. 1 year, 2 years to a severely injured child deprived of all the normal pursuits of boyhood. The distinction is hardly one of arithmetic.
Your Honor, if counsel for the plaintiff is making his closing remarks to the jury, I, for one, was not aware that he had rested his case.
Nor was I. Will you continue with your witness, Mr. Tower?
Yes, Your Honor, I will. Dr. Mossman?
Yeah?
Would you identify these for the court, please?
These are x-rays of Nick Norman, taken at St. Charles Hospital August 23rd at my request.
Would you be good enough to tell us what those x-rays reveal?
Why, the boy's condition. The fractured shoulder, arm, and you can see the bones protruding here, here, and here.
Well, speaking generally, would you advise moving a person with such injuries?
Objection, Your Honor. Speaking generally, could embrace a burning building, a shipwreck at sea.
Will you rephrase your question to exclude such disasters?
Very well, Your Honor. A young boy trapped in a wrecked automobile, an ambulance, qualified help on the way. Now, what action would you take under those circumstances?
I would administer an antibiotic against infection.
Now, you would not attempt to move the boy?
Certainly not.
Thank you very much. No further questions, you may cross-examine.
Dr. Mossman?
Yes?
Young Nick Norman was a victim of a serious automobile accident. My question is, could his present injuries be a result of that accident?
Yes, of course.
And the boy's present condition could conceivably have nothing to do with whether or not he was moved by Dr. Sabowski.
Objection, Your Honor. Now, I have until this point made concessions to my young colleague's lack of experience, to the fact that he is a student of the law. However, I must now challenge his deliberate journey into the realm of the subjunctive, to the worlds of if, of might, of perhaps.
Sustained. Could you be more direct?
Dr. Mossman, where did you first examine young Nick Norman?
In the accident ward of St. Charles Hospital.
Was he on the examination table?
Yes, he was on the examination table.
That means that he had to be moved from the ambulance stretcher to the examination table.
Yes.
And then it also means that he had to be moved from the ambulance to the accident ward.
Of course.
Wait, let me check my addition. First, he had to be moved from the car to the shoulder of the road. Then he had to be moved from the shoulder of the road to the ambulance. Then from the ambulance to the accident ward. And then from the accident ward to the examination table. That's 4 times. At least I think that's 4 times if my addition is correct. That's 4 times, Dr. Mossman, that the boy was moved before you examined him. Now, isn't it possible that his present injuries could have been as a result of one of those moves or as a result of all of them?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Dr. Mossman, are ambulance attendants, are they doctors or interns?
No. However, they're proficient in first aid. They're trained. That is, for emergency situations.
All right, let's take all these things, all these factors. Now, with all these factors involved, isn't it conceivable, Doctor, that before the ambulance arrived, that the boy might have died?
Your Honor, I object.
Sustained.
Your Honor, if I'm not out of order, I would like to try to answer that question.
Counselor?
Very well, I withdraw my objection.
When men seek ultimate truth, we encounter an imponderable which must be described as the will and grace of God. I can only testify for myself, not for him.
Next up, it's Julie Andrews in Julie, only on Nick at Night's TV Land.
Cannon's smart. He's charming. He's the best in his field. And we all know it's what's on the inside that really counts. Meaning? Meaning there's really no reason to dwell on, well, you know.
The fact that I'm kind of fat?
You mean it doesn't bother you?
Yeah.
Well, still, it would be way too cheap to take pot shots at Cannon for the way he runs, how he's always breathing hard, or how he looks when he's fighting, or how about when he's lying down, or even better, when he's getting up. No, wait, it gets better. Look at this. Okay, one more time. It really is kind of funny. Cannon, a no-nonsense private detective, only on TV Land.
They were the originators, the founders, the legends of a golden age. The innovators of TV Land.
I personally have written over 1,400 songs and nearly 300 of what we in the music business call the musical stings. But I suppose I'll always be remembered, most of all, for this little ditty. I was very fast. Many of the top producers turned to me because I could score an episode in an hour. Theme song would take me maybe 2-3 hours. So they're looking for a piece of music for this particular moment. And he says to me, now Marvin, it has to be funny. But Marvin, it has to have pathos. And Marvin, I need it tonight. And I say, yeah, sure. And has to catch mice and stand on his hands. But I work at it anyhow. And I got it. Wah, 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 wah. I also wrote wink, wah. You know, a guy says, I'm not wearing that dress. And I cut him with wink, wah. And he's in the dress saying, how do I look? Later, I became something of a specialist in creating tunes for tuneless humming. Like, you know, guys trying to be nonchalant, you know, yaddy-dee, yaddy-da. I wrote that. I love this business.
Think you're having a bad day? Welcome to TV Land, where somebody else's day is always worse than yours.
In the last 24 hours, we lost the house. You found out you couldn't have babies. I killed a man.
Marty Nichols was murdered. A 14-year-old boy killed his father, and you still have a cop killer on the loose. What would you like to talk about first?
Yes, here in TV land, you can forget your troubles and enjoy someone else's.
You came in here for a proctology exam, and you're going to get one.
So the next time you feel like saying, just say, take me to TV land.
In Soviet Georgia, there are two curious things about the people. A large part of their diet is yogurt, and a large number of them live past 100. Now, we're not saying that Dannon yogurt will help you live longer, but Dannon low-fat yogurt is a wholesome, natural food rich in nutrition. By the way, 89-year-old Bagrat Tapagua liked Dannon so much, he ate 2 cups. That pleased his mother very much. Dannon, America's #1 yogurt, is here.
Take me to TV Land.
Now back to the young lawyers right here on TV Land.
Objection, Your Honor. I submit that Nurse Adams' testimony is irrelevant and extraneous.
But surely, Your Honor, the defendant's stability or lack of it, his dependability or lack of it, is at the very heart of this issue.
Objection overruled. The witness will continue.
Well, the nurse's dorm at that hour of the morning was a pretty frantic scene. Well, all the lights were on, and the girls were running around it. Well, it was wild. It seems that Dr. Sabowski and a few of the other interns had rushed in wearing surgical masks and carrying candles.
Now, Nurse Adams, what was the purpose of this nocturnal raiding party?
Well, they said they were witch doctors. They were concocting some kind of a brew and said they needed an eyelash from a virgin.
Thank you very much. No further questions. You may cross-examine.
Nurse Adams, would you say the nurses were excited?
Yes, definitely.
Were they also flattered?
But of course.
No further questions.
The third round was the same. Dr. Sabowski had another bottle of beer, and his friends had scotches.
Now, Miss Porter, how would you describe the mood of Dr. Sabowski's group?
But they were just fine. You know, real happy.
Happy. Now, as you know, Miss Porter, there are various kinds of happiness. There's the happiness of a quiet couple watching a sunset, the happiness of a family having Christmas dinner. Was it that kind of happiness you observed in Dr. Sabowski's group?
No, it was like they were grooving.
Would you describe the happiness in Dr. Sabowski's group as hilarity?
Oh, sure. I mean, they were having a ball.
Now, did their behavior draw the attention of any other diners?
Well, they were looking at him, sure. Dr. Sabowski. He and his friends are kind of like a show.
Kind of like a show. Now, Miss Porter, you know, we've established that the accident to Mr. Norman's car occurred at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Now, my question is, what time did you serve Dr. Sabowski his third bottle of beer?
It was about that time.
3 o'clock?
Yes.
Are you quite certain of that?
Yes, I'm certain. You see, I just had a half an hour left on my shift.
I see. Thank you very much. You may examine.
Miss Porter, did Dr. Sabowski and his friends do anything else that afternoon? I mean, besides the rounds of drinks.
Well, they talked and laughed a lot. They were always joking. Oh, and they played darts.
Oh, darts. Was that before or after the drinks?
Afterwards. You see, that's how they decided who'd pay the check.
Oh, the losers paid?
Yes.
Would you mind telling us who won the game?
Dr. Sabowski. You see, he usually does. The first player to make 3 straight bullseyes wins.
Is this dartboard similar to the one at the Red Fox?
Yes, it's the same make.
Your Honor?
Thank you.
Well, then, what you're saying is that after several beers, Dr. Sabowski took 3 of these and threw them right in the center of this little circle.
That's what he did.
Oh, From, what distance did he do this?
Oh, 15 feet.
15 feet. About this far?
Yes.
Well, then what you're saying is Dr. Sabowski threw 3 of these, 15 feet, into that tiny little circle.
Yes.
No further questions.
Yes. As a result of this legal action, I suspended Dr. Sabowski.
Sir, how would you evaluate the defendant as a doctor?
Well, he's a fine surgeon. He's a fine doctor. But, and this may sound crass, there's more to the healing arts than medical science. A doctor must have imagination, the kind of imagination that embraces the interdepartmental problems of the hospital, the interrelation of its parts, its personalities.
Does Dr. Sabowski, in your judgment, lack such imagination?
Yes. Such items as cost and overhead.
Thank you. Well, I'll accept that as an affirmative answer. Have you discussed these deficiencies with Dr. Sabowski?
Yes, on many occasions.
Now, was he sympathetic to your advices, to your concerns?
No, I'd hardly call it that.
Oh? Well, was his reaction hostile?
It would seem to me that Dr. Sabowski's attitude in those areas that I've mentioned was one of total indifference.
Thank you very much. No further questions. You may cross-examine.
Dr. Schurz, in a given week, how many hours would you say that Dr. Sabowski put in at St. Charles?
Well, let's say 10 or 12-hour day. There's one day off every 2 weeks. It's roughly an 80-hour week.
Now, during those 80 hours, in the accident ward, in surgery, while making daily examinations of patients, would you describe Dr. Sabowski's attitude as one of indifference?
Well, on the contrary, I said he was a fine, dedicated doctor.
No further questions, Your Honor.
No, I wasn't worried that the ambulance might have a wreck or be late. Those drivers are pros. Good enough to see bringing the man.
Now, if you weren't afraid that the ambulance would not arrive, would you please tell the court why, against the orders of Mr. Norman, you moved his son from the car?
I did that to save his life.
But you've heard an eminently qualified doctor, Dr. Mossman, testify that he would not have moved the boy from the car. Now, does his testimony in any way make you doubt the wisdom of your own decision?
All I know is it's one thing to make a decision based on x-rays, but at the scene of the accident, the boy was trapped in the car. I saw the damage to his shoulder. I knew that moving him might aggravate it, but trapped as he was, if he needed hard massage, mouth to mouth, then forget it. There's no room. Also, if he had any fractured ribs, splinters, I was worried that he might rupture his lungs and hemorrhage to death. If he came to, started thrashing around.
Your witness.
Thank you. Dr. Sabowski, in the interest of absolute fairness, I'd like to ask you this question. On the afternoon of the accident, was there any chance you might have misunderstood Mr. Norman's words to you?
Come again, please.
No, I mean simply this. Now, we have established that Mr. Norman told you not to touch his son. Now, my question is, was there a high wind blowing or a sonic boom or some physical phenomenon which obscured the meaning of his words to you?
No. I read him loud and clear.
Thank you. If you can do no good, at least do no harm. Well, I see that you recognize those words. Would you be good enough to tell the court what I'm quoting from?
The words in the principle are attributed to Hippocrates.
Hippocrates, the author of the Hippocratic Oath, which you as a doctor have sworn to. Is that not correct, Dr. Sabowski?
Yes.
If you can do no good, at least do no harm. Now, what do you suppose those mean, Dr. Sabowski?
Objection, Your Honor. I submit it is my distinguished colleague who now ventures into the realm of the subjunctive.
Objection sustained.
Dr. Sabowski, would you examine these x-rays? They're marked Exhibit A for the plaintiff. You recognize them?
Sure. They're the boys taken right after the accident.
Now tell me, is there any evidence there of rib damage?
No.
No, any evidence of damage to the ribs whatsoever?
No.
Well, then the impulsive damage you inflicted on that young boy was based solely on a guess. Is that not true, Dr. Sabowski?
You could say that.
Yes, I am saying that. And furthermore, is it not true that your reckless guess was wrong, Dr. Sabowski?
Since you're not a doctor, let me show you something. See that? Right there. That splintered collarbone points like a dagger right at his upper thorax.
Are we now to understand that you are concerned with splintered collarbones?
I was trying to save his life.
And Dr. Sabowski, you have already testified that you are concerned with the boy's broken ribs. Now, x-rays indicate that your fears in this area were groundless. Now you are suggesting that you were in error. You were in error about the boy's ribs and, in fact, are concerned with splintered collarbones.
Objection, Your Honor. Counsel is badgering the witness.
Overruled.
Answer my question.
No.
Well, since you were guessing, is it not true that your guesswork resulted in severe injuries to that young boy?
If I hadn't guessed, he might have died.
Please answer my question. Is it not true that your guesswork resulted in severe damages to that young boy?
Yes.
Thank you very much. No further questions?
The bench reminds the witness that he is still under oath.
Dr. Scherz, having testified for the prosecution, you are what is known in law as a hostile witness. However, this does not excuse you from giving responsive answers to my questions.
I understand it.
Dr. Scherz, if a patient is moved several times after an accident, is it possible to determine which move aggravated the original injuries?
No, I would say that's impossible.
But supposing one of the moves was made by a qualified doctor, and the others were made by ambulance attendants who were not doctors, would it be possible then to determine at what point the original injuries were aggravated?
Objection, Your Honor.
Objection sustained.
Dr. Scherz, do you carry a medical valise with you at all times?
Yes.
Even while you're traveling or if you go on a vacation?
Well, yes, it just goes into the car with the rest of my luggage.
Why?
I beg your pardon?
Well, why do you carry a medical valise with you at all times?
Well, I'm a doctor. You never know what might happen when you might be needed.
So then, in the event of an accident or a disaster in which people were hurt, if you were present, you would go to their aid?
Well, if the circumstances were right, yeah.
Well, let's try to imagine specific circumstances, Doctor. Imagine, if you will, a lonely road. Imagine a boy trapped in the wreckage of a car. Imagine, if you can, his helplessness, his terror, his pain.
Objection, Your Honor. Your Honor, I cannot believe that my young adversary is deliberately seeking to add to the pain of my client and to his son. Perhaps in his youth and his lack of experience, he is not even aware that he's doing so.
Can you develop your comments less melodramatically, Mr. Silverman?
I'm sorry, Your Honor. You know about the accident, Doctor. You know what happened. You know what Dr. Sabowski did. I have one question. If you were present, within an arm's length of the boy, what would you have done?
I would hope and pray that I had the guts and the presence of mind to decide and act exactly as Dr. Sabowski did.
Don't go away. The young lawyers will be right.
What has been established in reference to Dr. Sabowski. We know that he had a few beers on his day off. Plaintiff established it. We conceded. We know that he has a rather primitive sense of humor, and that he likes girls. Established. Conceded. But what else has been established? We know now that Dr. Sabowski is a man who is dedicated to the easing of pain and the protection of life. And we have learned that he's a man who is not dissuaded by those cautious souls who say, hey, I don't want to get involved. It's not my responsibility. No, nor is a man easily dissuaded by those cautious souls in his own profession who mutter darkly of malpractice suits and legal reprisals. We've heard a lot of talk about guesswork and the mercy of God, and there's been a lot of honest confusion in this courtroom. But two facts remain blindingly clear. There is no guesswork about the fact that that boy is alive. And there's no guesswork about the fact that that man is facing professional ruin because he determined to keep that boy alive. Now I'm going to ask you a question, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, and I want you to think about it because I think it's very important. If you had to choose between a good Samaritan and a man who says, geez, wow, I just don't want to get involved. It's not my problem. I want to play it safe. I want to play it by the book. Which man, ladies and gentlemen? Which man would you choose?
May I please the court? Forgive me, Counselor. Your Honor, may I approach the bench?
Yes, of course. Counselor.
Your Honor, my client wishes to discontinue his case against the defendant and will assume all court costs.
Your client understands the possibility of legal reprisal from the defendant.
Yes, Your Honor, he understands that.
I can assure you, Your Honor, there will be no legal reprisal.
Case dismissed.
All right.
This is a case that'll present any problem. Get all the paraphernalia, do our homework in time. Have them bring in the bills, the canceled checks, anything that
I was so scared and so relieved I forgot to thank you. You remember Janie?
Sure. How are you?
Sebastian?
Good to see you.
She's got a friend. If we're not doing anything Friday, we could have a few beers, if you'll pardon the expression. Deal?
It's a deal. I'd like to do that very much. Bye-bye. You take care of yourself.
Now, stay tuned for our Big Stars Little Screen edition of The Wonders of TV Land. Next.
With all the